I want to begin early because we have a lot of good information to share with everyone. So I'm going to really keep this intro short. My name is Dr. Johnny Pula, and I'm with AISES. I'm the Associate Director of Student Success Services, and I'll be serving as a host for this webinar. Before we begin, I want to make sure that everyone knows some of our house rules for our webinars. I want to make sure to tell everyone that we will be turning off the camera for everyone that comes because we want to save our bandwidth. And I also want to make sure that everybody will be on mute for the webinar. But you are able, if you have a question, you can use the chat option in the top right corner to type in your questions, and we will be reading those periodically throughout the webinar. So again, no videos, no chat. Use the chat option to do your questions, and then we will begin. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter. This is Mr. Tom Lassiter, and he is the from Internet of Things, retail banking, hospitality, education. So I'm going to let him take the show over. Go ahead, Tom.
Great. Thanks, Johnny. And thanks everyone for joining. We're excited about being able to present this out to you, and hopefully it'll be of value to you. And we would like for this to be interactive, and we have a couple of break points in the presentation to ask questions. So let me start off with my path. This is something that's kind of interesting, at least to me. It may not be for others, but I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I'm a fifth generation Oklahoman. My family's been there for quite a while. Originally, my family was from Seminole County. We have a Creek background, and my parents both grew up on small farms in Seminole County, just outside of Wewoka. And then after World War II, my parents were fairly well along when I was born. They moved to Stillwater, where Oklahoma State University is located, and they specifically picked Oklahoma Stillwater because they knew that would give their kids the best option for attending university. So my parents, in a way, were setting up our own STEM program for the kids, if you will. Actually, we've got some feedback on the line. If you don't mind, would you mind muting? Or it could be on my side. It seems like that's fixed it. But from an early age, myself and I had a couple of cousins that I grew up with. I think I was 8 years old. We always had discussions around what kind of an engineer we would be. It wasn't whether we were going to college. It wasn't, there was really no discussion around that. It was more about, okay, what kind of an engineer do you want to be when you go to college? Interestingly, we didn't talk about becoming a doctor or lawyer or finance professional or something like that. It was, it was mostly around engineering. So I grew up in Stillwater. I spent a lot of time on the campus. Went to camps there. I rode my bike. It was back in the day when we rode our bicycles all over town, small town. And, I literally sort of grew up on the campus. We lived about a mile and a half away. And so, all of us would get together and we'd ride around the campus and have fun. I ended up going into electrical engineering. I've got a bachelor's and master's, both from Oklahoma State. And specifically, I studied quite a bit of music as I was growing up, and I ended up deciding to focus on signal signal processing, image processing, and neural networks or AI in graduate school. And it was based on that human utilizing machines, computing, to mimic what it is that we do as humans, like vision, speech, speech reproduction, speech compression, um, sensory inputs. And then, as I found out about neural networks and AI, then that's where you actually are directly trying to mimic what it is that we do as humans. So anyway, that's a little bit of the career background, the educational background. After graduate school, I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, with Motorola Semiconductor. So I've had a multitude of roles with Motorola as a systems and DSP algorithms engineer, Crystal Semiconductor as a product marketing lead, and then I ended up with a Bay Area-based startup company as a regional sales manager, which then ended up getting acquired by Intel. So that's how I came into Intel about 20 years ago now. So my career has spanned, what I would say is many different facets or of the overall surface around this high tech and business world. And so one of the things I wanted to leave you with is, while I started out as an engineer, I still do engineering. You can't take the engineer out of someone, but what I tend to do, what I'm focused on now is fundamentally business, and then how do we address business needs and business problems or transform businesses with technology. And that's what we're doing at Intel in the hospitality space. That's what we're trying to do. It takes a lot of work. And then later on in my career, I realized that to really understand what's going on with businesses, I needed the MBA. I needed to go back for an MBA so I could really sit down with a CFO or a CTO or a CIO or a CEO in an organization, and not just approach it from a technical perspective, but from an overall business perspective. And then I know a lot of you are in college. I did want to highlight that, my path has been fun and exciting, and I've gotten to do a lot of things. I've got over 100 passport stamps in my passport, a lot of cool stuff like that. But to be frank, it hadn't been easy. This is something, I always go back to my freshman chemistry course in electrical engineering, and the chemistry professor, he looked at us and he laughed and goes, "Yeah, okay, so you all want to become engineers, right?" He goes, "Okay, look to your left, look to your right," and he said, "2 out of 3 of you will not become engineers because you won't make it through my class," right? So, and now that's the kind of program we had at Oklahoma State. If you wanted to become an engineer, you had to really want it. You had to work hard at it. And, those of us in STEM programs, we're also blessed. We're probably above average in intelligence. So you've got the raw capability, but that hard work's got to be there. And then, I didn't make A's in all my courses. I actually had to take that chemistry course twice, right? I didn't pass it the first time. But you know what? I wanted it. So I actually went back and successfully completed it, and then I moved on. Now, it also proved to me I didn't want to become a chemical engineer. So I checked that off the list. So anyway, sorry, a little long-winded. It's a bit of a background, but for objectives on the webinar, well, I wanted to give you an introduction into the hotel, resort, and casino industries, as well as some of the technical solutions that are being deployed there, and particularly given that we're this is an AISES presentation. Most of us have a Native American background. We do have a unique position with Indian gaming in the United States. It's it's kind of a cool thing to have literally almost our own industry, right? So anyway, with that said, I wanted to give you a high level of overview of what we look at in what we call RBHE, or Retail Banking, Hospitality, and Education. Previously, the group name was the Retail Systems Division, but in a nutshell, we help drive and foster development of solutions that typically interact with people, although they're not a classic PC per se. These are the retail systems that you would interact with. ATM systems are part of our banking group, right? We have systems in transportation, right? So some of those are behind the scenes, and then many of them are, as an example, the airline schedules that you see. Those are solutions that we help drive and help develop out of the RBHE division. We do a lot of work with corporate collaboration. So those would be collaboration rooms that have dedicated hardware for Zoom meetings, go-to meetings such as Skype, Microsoft Teams, Polycom systems, Cisco systems. Those are solutions. In shopping centers, we have kiosk systems. We have digital signage solutions. We have point-of-sale terminals, right? In public spaces, you see, maybe at a bus terminal or at a bus stop, you might see solutions there. We're seeing a lot of activity in the smart city space, right? So that there's a lot more information that's being presented to people. It's same in education. That's actually handled by a combined group that does both corporate collaboration as well as education collaboration, telelearning, things like that. And then specifically, what I focus on are hotels, resorts, and casinos. In a general sense, we call that hospitality, right? So next, what I wanted to show you is the size of the business in the Americas. And this is a statement for primarily the U.S., but also Canada, Mexico, and Latin America. It's it's over a $200 billion business. Globally, it's about a $1 trillion business in direct revenue to hotels, resorts, and casinos. So globally, we look at it, it's about $1 trillion in direct revenue. It's over $6 trillion in combined direct and indirect revenue. So that when you look at all of the businesses that are there to support, that are required to support, hotels or resorts globally, maintenance, construction solutions, communication services, all of those types of solutions that are required to make the businesses work. It's a very, very large sector. We would call this a sector. We've listed here, and this is from Statista. One thing I'd always recommend is if you're interested in a space, just go out and do Google searches on, as an example, this came up with hospitality market research, and this is one of the first items that we'll hit. It's freely available on the web, but it shows us the property counts, right? So, Wyndham, Choice Hotels, Marriott's, there are a lot of locations in the U.S. And then if we look at guest rooms, there are almost 7 17 million guest rooms globally. So if we look at the number of hotel rooms, it's massive, right? Here in the U.S., we've got over 2 million. So those are, that's a lot of beds. That's a lot of TV systems. That's a lot of video distribution systems into the hotels, right? It's a lot of human touch points. And then I've split out, and I think it's relevant for how we look at it. I've split out specifically the casino business for the Americas, and actually this is a U.S. statement. It's a $42 billion business just in the U.S. We've got 465, you might think of them as traditional casinos. And then we actually have more tribal casinos today than we do, classic Las Vegas or Atlantic City style casinos. So, this is a pretty interesting industry for us. And I'm hoping that, engineering students, STEM students through AISES will consider this as, a possible career path for yourselves. But then I also wanted to hit upon, some of these are very modest, right? On the lower left-hand side, we have a very modest casino, right? And then we recently had the AISES Leadership Conference at the Pechanga Resort and Casino in Temecula, California. It's a stunning property. It's a 4 or 5-star hotel by everyone's measure. It's just, a beautiful, beautiful property. And so it's interesting when we look at the dynamics involved with by having sovereign nations, the sovereignty, it enables the tribes to operate businesses a bit differently than what normally would be allowed through normal regulatory structures. So it's pretty interesting. And then over on the right-hand side, it's probably a bit of an eye chart, but I wanted to have it in. It shows that the gaming locations by state. So as you look at, if you do look at the casino business or the hotel space, I'd recommend that you jump in the car and you go over and visit the properties and you look at the solutions. There's some really cutting-edge solutions that are being deployed in the casino space. And then I've also got listed Resorts World Las Vegas. It's currently probably globally, but definitely in the U.S., one of the largest builds in process right now. We're doing quite a bit of work with them at Intel on their solution sets, but it's a $4.3 billion construction and implementation budget. It has over 4,000 hotel rooms. They'll be Hilton branded. They have 3 different Hilton brands, Hilton Conrad, which is higher end brand, and then they actually have a higher end brand that I don't even know about, right? But then, this is truly an amazing facility in that the tower on the left, that's actually an LED video wall. So the scale of the digital solutions that they're deploying is, it's something that would be unheard of 5 years ago, or definitely 10 years ago. And then one thing about this is the intent is for the entire property to be a well-curated and managed digital experience for the guests. It comes back to technology for technology's sake. Sometimes you may need it, but then what we're really trying to look at is how can that actually impact people's lives, guest experience in this case. And then, right up there at the top of the list is how can it help the properties create a preference for the resort or a hotel, or Can they charge more for it? Will you pay more because of the experience? Or maybe you spend more time and money in their entertainment venues, their retail establishments, the restaurants on property, because it's a better experience. One thing I did want to look at, and I think I know in my career it took me a while to sort of understand this, but there's this term in marketing called market segmentation. And what we look to do is we look to decompose a market into buckets, if you will, subsegments, based on the characteristics that they have, right? So in this case, we have budget hotels, boutique hotels, business, luxury 5-star, integrated resort casinos, and then we've got cruise ships as well. And you know, as you look at an industry and then try to determine what solutions might fit in it, it's always good to, if you can, decompose it so that you can target what it is that you work on. You can target on the products that you build. You can target the technologies that you're utilizing to implement different use cases. You know, as an example, we've spent some time on resort casinos, right? Well, those same solutions won't apply in a budget hotel. You know, they just won't apply in a Best Western. But there are things that we can learn that do transfer across that. So that's what we're always looking to do. And then what you'll see as we go into the rest of the presentation, at Intel, we look at the different subsegments, and then we look at commonalities across them. So what are the solutions that we can build that would hit, you know, maybe a budget hotel, maybe it's all the way to a hotel, resort, and casino, right? And some of the solutions won't fit, and that's fine. But then many of the solutions we actually can deploy something that's that would deploy across all the segments. You know, when you're looking to do product development or engineering development, use case development, the more markets you can hit, the better. But then to be effective in each of those segments, you actually you need to target those segments, each specific segment. And then I think we're at a brief break. Were there any questions, Johnny, or?
No, not at this time. There hasn't been any questions. Not yet so far. But I do want to let everybody know in the room that to the right, upper right corner, if you want to type a question in, you can just type in your question in the chat, and then we will ask them periodically. So just to give everybody a reminder that you're welcome to continue if you like.
Great. All right. So now we get into the fun stuff. These are the solutions that I talked about deploying across the different hospitality subsegments. Was there a question? Yeah. Okay. So what do we actually do? What do we actually build, right? So this is always a good question for us at Intel, because at the end of the day, we build semiconductors, we build CPUs and chipsets and Ethernet controllers and Wi-Fi modules, you know, a multitude of chips. We manufacture semiconductors. But how do these show up in the world? What kind of devices do they get deployed in? Right? You know, at the end of the day, we've got to have partners that build these solutions, and then how they get deployed into valuable use cases. So as an example here, this is basically a large list of, and each one of these are very large business segments of the different retail type systems that get deployed into hospitality that run on Intel. Interactive kiosks, we're doing some interesting work there, and we can go into more detail if we have time on that. But kiosks, ATM systems, we've all seen wayfinding kiosks where you look to find your way through a shopping mall or perhaps at a hotel. Like a train station ticketing kiosk, this could be very similar to an automatic ticketing kiosk for a parking garage that would deploy at a hotel, right? Maybe you purchase a ticket for a a show or at the restaurant or bar or something like that. Interactive payment kiosks, those are very prevalent. Maybe you're paying for your parking, something like that. Point of sale terminals, right? We may not think about that much, but the checker at the grocery store, the concierge, the person at the check-in desk, they're actually probably using an Intel-based system underneath. Looks a lot like a computer, and then on top of that, a lot of times it runs Windows, just like what we have on our PCs. And then there's very sophisticated software that integrates into the overall hotel customer management system, property management systems, and payment systems as well. Let's see. One of the interesting areas that's doing extremely well and taking off is autonomous vending, smart vending systems. You've seen these in airports some. Hotels are looking at them for replacement of their grab-and-go shop, their convenience shop. And there's real value that can be added by a moderate compute platform. You can present advertisements, you can make product recommendations, you can give the customer a better guest experience through a computer and display that's included in the vending solution. So that's a pretty interesting area right now that we're seeing a lot of activity in. Let's see. Digital signage and menu boards, video walls. We see a lot of those in casinos and hotels, right, and restaurants as well. And here again, it's the visual presentation of the information to customers, right? The better we present it, the better ability that we have to make the customer happy and have them spend money with you. At the end of the day, it comes down to that. So what are we looking to do? These are major trends that we see across not only hospitality, but then most of our retail, banking, hospitality, and education areas. It's integration. They want something that's plug and play if they can get that. It needs to be affordable, right? The form factor is key. Would you put a kiosk in a tribal casino that has Mickey Mouse ears on it? No, you wouldn't, right? You would customize the solution for maybe to the tribe, maybe to the audience, however you might do that. And then what we're seeing a big focus on right now is workload consolidation. Everyone wants to make their systems more intelligent, more responsive, more interactive. Some of the top trends that we're working on is artificial intelligence. And Magana presented in our last webinar a very detailed view into what we're doing in the AI space. And all of that work, all of that technology work, we're taking into literally every device type, every market segment. We're deploying that as quickly as we can across every industry that has any need whatsoever for it. And what we're finding is almost every industry needs it or can benefit from it. But one thing I wanted to highlight when we specifically look at hospitality and retail type systems is and you can equate this to working with your cell phone. The best experience is a highly responsive experience. Most of us will upgrade our phone when it's not responsive enough for us anymore. At least I know that's why I normally upgrade it. Normally it's not on features, it's not on call quality, it's not on network quality, right? It's not on radio connection capability. That's not it. It normally comes down to responsiveness. And what's the most responsive system? It's a system that actually is predicting effectively what it is I want before I even ask for it. So as an example, you can think of it in a kiosk a use case example where I go up to the kiosk and I'm looking to order a cheeseburger, and me and my buddies are staying at the casino so that we can watch football games over the weekend. We can do a logo detect with our AI capability, and they can tell that I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan because I've got a Kansas City Chiefs ball cap on. They can customize the menu for me, right? Am I more likely to buy a Kansas City strip steak than a New York strip? Maybe a little bit. And actually, if the preference is even just a few percentage points better, that has real business value, right? So in that case, we actually could customize the menu at the restaurant. We could customize the drink offerings at the bar, right? We could customize, the rooms, right? So instead of calling the corner suite room just a corner suite room, maybe they look at it and they call it the big Kansas City Chief room, right, or something like that, the Chief suite or something, and then that actually, if we do that effectively, we can actually have people spend more money with us. It brings real value to the properties when it's done well, right? One thing we always have to do with artificial intelligence is we're extremely focused on meeting all the privacy requirements, enabling, anonymity if that's a requirement. So we're extremely diligent about that at Intel, and then the entire customer base, the entire partner base on doing that. We can also look at automation. Automation is a huge trend in creating efficiency within hotels and resorts, right? So you want to make sure you have the right products, the right people in the right location at the right time to maintain the room, to make sure your rooms are clean, so that you have the right goods at each of the restaurants, right? And then it's interesting, and as STEM students, I'm sure we hear a lot about cloud, right? Amazon Cloud, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure Cloud. There are lots of different cloud solutions, and those are absolutely of very high value in the space as far as all workloads, all use cases. But then it actually, we have to be very careful about that, because in many cases there are privacy restrictions, on being able to ship personal information to the cloud. Is an example with many of the casinos, the gaming regulatories will not let the customer's information leave the property. And so that information has to stay what we would call at the edge. It has to stay in a data center at the resort. It can't go up to the cloud. If they're trying to do facial recognition, looking for, good guys or bad guys or high value people, people that spend lots of money, they actually can't ship that up to the cloud. It has to stay on-prem. And so, there's some interesting architectural trade-offs that we have to look at there. We also have to look at latency, right? So if I'm shipping data across the country to a data center, the speed of light is still a law. The physics doesn't change for us just because we have networks. Now, faster networks are better, but at the end of the day, many, many times we can build lower latency solutions where we're doing what you might think of as cloud at the edge. We're doing that edge processing locally out on-prem. And then also we see the value of interconnecting sensors, right? Of interconnecting the data. There's, I talked about some device-specific examples, but as we start to aggregate this together, and I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so I'll continue on with that thread. But as an example, if we got off the shuttle bus from the airport, or if 2 carloads of Chiefs fans, walk through the hotel door, if we can determine that we have 12 Chiefs fans and 2 Raiders fans, maybe we triggered changes in the signage within the hotel to better appeal to the audience that we have coming in. Maybe we modify it based on age, right? So, and these, in most cases, would be what we'd call anonymous audience analytics. So they don't necessarily know that it's Tom or Johnny, right? They know that, we fit within a certain profile, and then we can modify the information. So for, as an example, for millennial, you don't really want to show them the things that would best fit with what I'm trying to look at. And then likewise, if a truckload of millennials show up, then you want to show them things that are most relevant to what they want to see, what they might want to buy. Here we have at Intel, we always go to we like our schematics and our diagrams. So what we have here is a relatively basic hotel, but we have a 3D rendering of it with some of the different technology solutions that we're specifically focused on in hospitality for our BHE. And some of these I've talked to, as an example, a Bellman kiosk, right? When you first arrive at the hotel, think of the value in it. If they identify me as I come in, and then they greet me by name, right? So the Bellman actually greets me by name and says, "Mr. Lassiter, it's good to see you again." The Bellman's already had my profile show on the screen because I'm a member of the loyalty program at the, Pechanga Resort and Casino. And so the next time I arrive, they can look at it. They greet me by name. They look at it. They also know what my preferences are, right? Maybe they look at it and go, okay, he doesn't really want us to take his bag. I'm carrying a roll-on bag, right? And then they can help direct me, right? And so it's a pretty interesting ability once we start adding the additional technology to the solution. And we can make the employee a better employee, a more hospitable employee, if you will, right? We have self-check-in kiosks, right? We have wayfinding. We have the ability to do wayfinding kiosks. And if we do these self-check-in kiosks correctly, I'll actually upgrade my room, right? So maybe they can convince me. We look at the inventory in the hotel. So we tap into the property management system and we look at it and say, well, these corner rooms that we normally sell for $400, they're not being, statistically, we're not going to rent them today. So when I come in, they say, Mr. Lassiter, would you like a room upgrade for $23? And I look at it and it's like, it's a corner room with a beautiful view of the resort and the golf course and the mountains. Sure, I'll pay the $23. And then that's real revenue for the hotels. And that hits directly how the hotel operates and how they look to drive their business. And then many of these solutions I've already talked to. Automatic checkout for the convenience store solution. We might do some safety analytics in the gym so that if we see someone that, is on the ground, not doing sit-up type movements, then, maybe we have someone walk in. In the pool area, perhaps we literally count the number of seconds that someone is underwater, right? And so if somebody's underwater for 20 seconds, we start sending someone out, right? In room, there's a lot of things we can do in room. Privacy, of course, is major concern. Collaboration systems. All of the hotels and resorts are looking at incremental ways that they can create revenue, or that they can also create traffic. So, a business collaboration system will. When we're traveling on business, will I pick a hotel that I know has state-of-the-art collaboration systems? I might do it based on the type of meeting that I have, right? Or what if we turn this into an esports arena, right? So now, as a hotel, let's take, this is a hypothetical example, but let's take a Best Western hotel. What if at a Best Western, I could set up an esports stadium, if you will, 6 PCs. I network that together with all of my other Best Western hotels. And then now I have an esports league. Maybe it's the Best Western Esports League. I drive traffic. People come in, they stay at our hotel. We run these things overnight, right? We sell more food. We draw traffic. There are all sorts of interesting things that we'll see going on in the space. So I would say if you're looking at, you may have a passion for esports, right? Well, think about how you can apply that into the hospitality space or the resort space, because there probably is some real value associated with that. Now, one of the things that we always do at Intel is we have to take this back to the people that it impacts. If we're not impacting customer preferences and behavior, through responsive and situationally aware systems, we're not going to delight the customer. But if we do pull this off, by the way, it's very subtle. It's not easy. It's hard. But there are many people, and there's very large industries around this to make it happen. So then if we look at what that does for the hotel operator, the resort operator, it creates, customer captivation. I actually want to stay there more than I would want to stay at the venue down the street. And then, I use the example on the room upsell. Perhaps I spend more. Perhaps I stay longer. Perhaps I am more likely to eat at the restaurants at the property as opposed to going next door to the other great restaurant. And then one of the things we always like to look at is what does the CEO and the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and the Chief Marketing Officer look at a hotel or resort. And here are the metrics that they look at. Average daily room rate. They're also looking at average daily occupancy. So how full are they? And then secondarily, they look at operations reduction. And then they're also looking at brand protection. So at the end of the day, if we want to sell some of these highly sophisticated, sometimes expensive systems, we have to equate it back to what the hotel operator cares about. I'm going to skip over this. These are the work areas, the different device flows that we spend our time on. I did want to touch real quickly, restaurants. We have restaurants at almost hotels. Example, the casino, the Paris casino in Las Vegas, it has the most restaurants that I'm aware of, and they have 12. They have 12 restaurants in the property. So we also we do a deep dive into the different technologies in restaurants also. And I'm trying to be cognizant of time, and I do want to leave you some time for any questions. So, hey, Johnny, I think we're at a question spot. Do we have any?
Yeah, we do have some questions. Let me start off with Miss Shelley. And she has a question. Do the casinos give their requirements to Intel and see if they can develop a product, or does Intel have working group relationships with the casinos that involve other vendors?
Great question. It's a great question. The reality of it is it's very iterative, right? So sometimes the hoteliers or the resorts or casinos, they know what they want, and then, so they can write, an RFQ, request for quote, request for information, request for proposal. They can take a look at that, right? They can write that. Now, many times, particularly with Intel, we're in a somewhat unique position because we do look at a broad base of technologies, right? I'll look at solutions that are coming out of the automotive team. I'll look at technologies that we're developing in banking around payment. I'll look at technologies, McGonag's presentation on AI. That's a technology that we're developing to literally stripe across every vertical industry in the world. And so a lot of times we have more expertise in that. And so it ends up being an iterative, what we would call use case discussion. So we look at, okay, I can do facial recognition. I can do emotion detection. I can do gesture recognition using AI. I can do speech recognition. Okay, now what do we do? And we work with our partners in the casinos and resorts on this. How do we take that and develop something that's valuable, right? Great experience, leads to more preference for the property. Maybe I spend more money. But, that's what we're looking at for value. So sorry, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's an iterative process. So Johnny, I can see the questions. You want me to, looks like Carrie's got one next.
We have them queued up.
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, we have them ready for you.
I can see them if you want me to run through them. So folks, I'm looking at the chat window. So from Carrie, it's like, has Intel looked into using some GPS location technology to help either the hospitality or retail industries to help customer draw, such as sending advertising or redemption coupons when a customer enters in range of a business? Excellent question. And absolutely, we're looking at a couple of different technology vectrs. Coming off your Android and Apple phones is what's called mobile ID. It's an anonymous ID. It's not GPS located. It is GPS based fundamentally, but it's anonymous data, and we're looking at using that to trigger what is shown on signage based on the audience that's nearby. We're looking at triggering, displays within a hotel lobby. As an example, if we know that based on the mobile IDs, they don't know it's Tom, right? But the example, we had a discussion on an example with a company who's building these, but they know I'm from Arizona. They know from my mobile ad ID that I'm from Arizona. They don't know who I am, but let's say it's winter in Minnesota. There's a really good chance I just don't have enough clothes, right? I don't have a heavy enough coat. And by the way, I've been in Minnesota at the airport, just like the movie, what we saw in the movie Fargo. And it was killing me. I didn't have enough clothes. I didn't have heavy enough socks, none of that. So we actually, when we know the flight's coming in, we don't need to know that the flight necessarily is coming from Arizona based on mobile ID. We actually can trigger advertisements for, Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom or Burlington Coat Factory. And you know what? Chances are there's a good chance that we would head over, right? So absolutely. For location-based technologies, we're using a couple. Fundamentally, mobile ID is GPS-based. We're using Wi-Fi networks, have very sophisticated location tracking ability, so that when you log on, actually, you don't even have to log on to the network. They may not know who you are, but they know where your phone is, and they know the path you take through the Wi-Fi network, the Wi-Fi infrastructure. We're using visual analytics so that we actually know that someone with a specific ID or MAC address, Wi-Fi address, is looking at a sign. You can infer that you're looking at it by looking at gaze, things like that. And then there's one more technology we're looking at, but I forget. And we're looking at those in the sense of integrated guest experience management. Yeah. So next up, Carmen, great question. What kinds of challenges is Intel encountering in the terms of the digital divide when it comes to working with Indian country? What opportunities do you see in terms of this limited infrastructure, connecting the disconnected? So one of the key things are wireless networking technologies, because we can deploy, extremely high-speed wireless broadband now that has a range that it makes it much more effective from a cost perspective than it would be to, as an example, bury cable or pull lines. So one of the key things that we do there is fundamentally wireless technology, and we have a huge push on 5G right now. And with 5G, we get greater than gigabit broadband wireless speeds. So that's one of the ways that we look at it. Now, near and dear to my heart, which may be a little bit different than a technical answer, but I'm the operations manager on the Intel's Native American Pacific Islander Leadership Council, and we focus on, as an example, STEM enabling through AISES. to me, I've got a passion for this to make technology available, right? Now, whether it's technology enabling, whether it's education, whether it's through webinars like this, so that perhaps one, maybe two, maybe three people on this call, they start looking at the business and the technical opportunity paths through that would have them continue on through STEM, right? We have some initiatives underway where we're looking to enable PCs with schools, right? Specifically targeted for Native Americans in this case. So we've got internships, and we'll get them posted. But I'd highly recommend, if any of you are interested in internships, go to intel.com and search on internships. Be careful about the search feature; it's a little bit unusual. So don't think there aren't any internships. We actually have quite a few. Go apply for the internships, right? Let's get you involved with Intel, and we have openings for the summer. Whether they're virtual or in person, we don't know quite now, but yeah. So that. Hope that answered your question. Up next is Wayne. How do you evaluate and map business process steps with the available technology solutions? Excellent question. I would almost say I think I'll sort of restate my answer for that Sheila brought up, which is when we're working with external partners and customers, and as an example, hoteliers or resorts or casinos, that ends up being a very iterative process, right? The requirements may not look like a spec sheet, right? Some of these things are very subtle and difficult to develop. So a lot of times it will look like a discussion. Then we bring in the right partners that we might look to address it. Now, if I take a look at this for internal use, we have extremely rigorous internal planning processes. And one of the main reasons why is, it takes us at least 18 months to go from initial silicon spec to product available in the market. And so it's an extremely deliberate, very complex process with literally thousands of people that work on it. We go through very detailed requirements collection, and then we vet those. We map them to the business opportunities. So if we add, as an example, a computer vision accelerator, right? What is the impact? It costs us money in die area for the silicon. We could put something else on there, right? More cache memory or something like that. I tell you what, in the essence of time, let me move on. Asha's got a great question near and dear to my heart. What are your thoughts on the future of experiential entertainment, virtual reality, arcades, interactive art scenes, esports, tournaments, etc., within casinos? I like the Atari hotels and the Area 15 work. So we're also part of a hospitality innovation accelerator in Las Vegas called Blackfire. It's primarily led by UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and also Caesars Entertainment. So those are the two private and public leads on that. And we're actively trying to figure these things out. How can we create more experiential, more interactive solutions? Whether it's a kiosk, whether it's a payment terminal, whether it's queuing up at a will call line. Maybe it's a table in a bar or restaurant. Our goal in this case is to turn literally every square inch of surface area into interactive pixels. Esports, I think, is a huge thing, right? You've hit on those. Interactive art spaces, those are interesting as well. Yeah. Virtual reality, that was a little tough on deployment without glasses. AD, yes, we'll provide the presentation materials. Ron has already covered that. Thank you. Let's see, what else?
Those are all the questions for now, so you might want to go to your wrap up. I answered all the others.
Okay. And Tyree Lynn, I haven't seen Skyscraper, so I don't know. So for a wrap up, do I have a wrap up slide next? I think it's buried further down. Stay involved with AISES. Help us help you by being involved in AISES. If you're older, help us with the younger kids. Show them what you're going through. Help us help them. You know them better than we do because you're closer to them. I'm old. I've got ideas on what I think, but you guys know how to talk to the younger people. So help us, help AISES to help our Native American community. Please. Go to intel.com, jobs.intel.com. If you're interested in internships, we would love to have you at Intel. So apply for those. Go and apply for them. And then I would say be curious, keep an open mind, look at things from multiple perspectives, and engineer your own future.
Okay, thank you. Johnny, you want to take it?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Rhonda. I just want to remind everyone that this is a series of Intel webinars. So this is our second one, and we'll have a third and a fourth one. And we'll have more details sent out to you guys who joined. You'll be on our mailing list for that, an email list. So be watching out for that one. I also want to let everyone know that I'm going to be sending out a survey for this webinar directly right after I get off. So be looking for that. And we will also be having this recorded webinar on our web page in AISES. It'll be maybe tomorrow or a couple days until we get that. But right now we have our first webinar up. So maybe by Friday, you'll be able to see the first one and the second one. And that's where we're going to be housing all of our webinars. So please check that out. Please follow us. Please check us out. And I also want to let everyone know that our AISES scholarships, the Intel scholarship, is due on May 15th. I was looking through some of the emails and I saw that a lot of students were joining. So thank you all for joining and get those scholarship applications in. And please join us for our next Intel webinar. And I hope you have a safe weekend and safe week and stay safe. So thank you so much. Thank you for our presenter. Thank you for our Ms. Rhonda, Mr. Rubin, everyone helping out. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.